Story 1. Verona. When I was 8, I decided that I wanted to be a ghost hunter. At that tender age, I was torn between the terrifying excitement of being alone in a haunted house at night and the soothing reality that there was probably nothing to be afraid of. My mother always told me spooky stories of the ghost she had seen, or heard or felt, and as much as I wanted to believe, I still had doubts. I wanted to get to the bottom myself and know for sure. When I was in college, I met Saber. His real name was Marshall Bailey, but people called him Saber because of the animal. Striped tribal tattoos on his neck and his cat-like gait. We began talking in our cryptozoology class. Saber had a knack for knowing more about some of the creatures than our professor. I learned that he was a paranormal photographer, and after weeks of getting to know each other, he brought me onto his ghost hunting team. There were 5 of us: Julie, the electronic voice phenomena expert EVPS, Jonathan, who had all the thermal imaging equipment to monitor changes in temperature and electromagnetic fields. Sal had the Connexio NS to get us into popular haunted locations. Saber was there to film it all, and then you had me, the skeptic. Saber felt that it was important to have an objective person in the group to keep a level head. Saber had been building his team for months before he was finally ready for the first assignment that would take place during spring break. We were headed nearly 800 miles away to a small town in Louisiana when the flat expanse of Indiana turned into the sprawling green of the South. We knew we were almost there. We left on Friday, and after 3 long days, we emerged from Van. We were here at Hotel Verona. Hotel Verona had been abandoned since 1971. Once a popular stop along the way to New Orleans, now was a dark stain in a quiet village. Having done my research, I knew that the hotel had been built by the wealthy Martin Vassar in 1948. Named after his wife, Verona was known for its aesthetic grandeur, luxurious creature comforts, and some of the best Cajun cuisine in the area. During its first decade, many famous faces and well-to-do travelers made sure to spend the night at the hotel and dine within the exclusive club, Adelaide. During the 1960s, however, Vassar had financial trouble, and the addition of new major highways routed traffic away from the elegant Verona. After gambling heavily to try to revive some of his fortune, Vassar lost most of his money by 1968. His wife caught pneumonia soon after and died, leaving him alone and penniless. The Hotel Verona hadn't had a guest since June 1971, and on a quiet night in August, Martin Vassar shot himself in the lounge of the lovely Adelaide without an interested beer. Verona's beauty faded away. In 2008, a historical society tried to renovate the old hotel, but as strange noises, injuries, and reports of being unable to remove artwork scared away the workers. Some believed that it was the ghost of Martin Vassar protecting his original masterpiece. Others thought the hotel already beheld a sinister presence, one that brought financial ruin to Vassar and death to himself and his wife. This theory would explain why the hotel has seemed to deteriorate so much in just a few decades. The stories and the pictures did not do the hotel justice. Through the faded design and obvious signs of years of neglect, It was easy to see the impressiveness of Th. Verona in its time. Sabre stared at the monument. With a sort of reverence, I smiled, excited for the night and ready to investigate. Entering through the ornate French double doors into the lobby, we immediately smelled the stagnant air. It had been a while since a breeze had penetrated this fortress. Dust covered every inch of the main floor, from the oversized concierge station to tea. Grand ballroom. Occasionally a critter would scurry off to safety. We decided to first set up the equipment in the old Adelaide restaurant and nightclub where Vassar killed himself. It was in the basement of the hotel, and since the elevators were no longer working, we had to lug the machinery down a flight of dusty, creaky stairs. I was the first into the club. All of the intimate, clothed tables sat along one of four tiers, looking down onto a stage. You could almost hear the Louisiana jazz playing as the finely dressed waiters served French wine and spicy jambalaya and Rons as Julie, Jonathan, and Sabre set up their equipment. Sal and I passed out sandwiches. Our clocks showed that the sun would be setting any time. It didn't take long before we started getting some activity. Julie's EVP monitor started picking up some sounds very soon after dark. In that old abandoned place, it was easy to feel like we were not alone after listening to the playback on her monitors. Julie played her audio recording for the group. A woman's voice was heard whispering, "Try." "Try," Sal asked. "What is that?" "It means betrayed." Sabre spoke up from behind his camera. My grandmother was French. I thought the sound was spooky, but not definitive proof of anything paranormal. It was going to take more than that to make a true believer out of me. After almost an hour of dormancy, we decided to move upstairs to the ballroom on the first floor. I was surprised at how different the lobby looked in total darkness. Without the golden sunshine bouncing through the glass, there was a much more sinister look about it. Only the light of our flashlights could distinguish color. In the ballroom, Julie didn't pick up any more voices, but Jonathan was able to detect some strange temperature changes throughout the room. I chalked that up to holes in the infrastructure, or maybe some animals had taken up shelter in the walls. We grew bored after a watt hour. Alan decided to explore the upper floors of the hotel. Sabre suggested that we split up to maximize time. Julie was going to record audio on the second floor. Sal would use a small handheld camera. On the third floor, Jonathan would monitor temperature. On the fourth floor, and Sabre and I would film the fifth floor at the top. We would all be connected with walkie-talkies, everyone set up on their respective floors. Sabre asked into the walkie. Yes was the resounding answer. We were to walk up and down the hallways and try to communicate with any potential spirits in any and rooms. As I walked next to Sabre in the dark, I began to feel an electric charge. I didn't realize my level of attraction to him until we were alone in this creepy place. I think he felt the tension because he inched closer to me as we walked, his arm brushing against mine occasionally. "So you speak French?" I asked timidly. "Yes, my grandmother taught me what hour, and I would spend summers with her in Lyon." "Do you really think that?" was a voice we heard speaking French in the restaurant. Don't you think it could have been the wind or something? I was even beginning to doubt myself as the full spookiness and excitement of the moment filled me. I wanted to believe in ghosts. Of course, don't you? He gave me an amused look. His eyes seemed really excited. I could tell this was exactly where he wanted to be. The hunt gave him some kind of I'm really not sure, but it makes it seem more real, being here with you. What do you mean? Saber asked earnestly. He moved closer, facing me. Our faces were inches apart now. I swallowed and said, I think that I might be getting caught up in the moment I was in, erupted by the sound of Julie's walkie. Guys, I've just picked up something strange. You might want to get down here. We moved apart instantly, the momentary spell broken, as we head down the hallway to T. He stares, another walkie crackles. You won't believe what I just saw, said Jonathan excitedly. Same here, replied Sal. We can't come to every floor. What is going on? Saber shouted into our walkie. He and I looked at each other in disbelief. Suddenly, a low rumbling could be heard from the back of the hallway just as a light began to grow from nowhere. Saber and I moved toward the sound and the light while he shined his camera at the source. The rumbling grew louder and the light brightened. I could tell as we got closer that they were coming from an open door at the end of T. hallway. Now there was a high-pitched keening sound, along with the rumble, and the bright light was not one, but many bright shapes emptying out of the room into the hallway. I backed away from the room as the human-sized shapes came closer. Saber, I shouted over the nose, let's go. I pulled on his arm, but he was mesmerized by the sight. It took many pulls and shoves and shouting before he snapped out of it and ran back down the hallway with me. On the way down the stairs, we ran into Jonathan and Sal as we raced to the second floor for Julie. The entire hotel felt as if it was shaking. The booming sounds as loud as ever. The lights from the top floor had reached the staircase and were slowly descending. Julie, we yelled as we neared the second floor. Into the walkie-talkie. Meet us by the stairs. We have to get out now. I'm outside by the van, Julie said, confused, as we heard Julie's voice also say, I'm on the second floor. Come see what I just found. We all stared at each other in horror. What the hell was that? Yale, Julie, through the first channel on the walkie. I'm outside. That wasn't me. We raced to the first floor and out the glass double doors into the night. All sounds stopped instantly, save for our hard, hurried breathing. Looking back at the Verona, I was shocked to see stillness and black. There were no lights moving on the floors anymore. We piled into the van and drove several miles before any of us could speak. Julie was the first to break the silence. I was never on the second floor. I went outside to the van first to get more batteries because my walkie-talkie died. When I tried to get back in, the door was stuck. That's when I heard you guys screaming. What was Hat? She slowly shook her head. We heard you earlier on the walkie too. You told us to come down right before. Well, whatever hell that was, and Jonathan and Sal said they saw something too. Saber recalled, no, I never said anything. My walkie died. Right after I heard Julie, Jonathan said as he looked fearfully at Sal. Mine too, said Sal. This is messed up. I.e., Art Loud Noses upstairs and ran to find you guys. I ran into Jonathan just seconds before you two appeared. Why was it impersonating us? Asked Julie. It sounds like it wanted to get us to tea. He's second floor, said Saber. It was silent for a while after that. The trip back home was uneventful, and we made it in 2 days instead of 3. None of us felt like stopping. I lost contact with the group. After that, I think we all just wanted to forget the experience. We were amateur ghost hunters, and none of us were prepared for what happened. As it turned out, none of the equipment had worked properly, and all footage and recordings were lost. It was easy to pretend that it was all a nightmare after that. I don't know anymore whether I believe in ghosts, but I know now that I no longer want to. Epilogue. After I submitted this story, I received messages from readers about the land that Hotel Verona stands on. It seems that it had a much darker history than I knew. Before Martin Vassar bought the land and built the hotel, it was owned by a family in the 1800s that acquired it during the Louisiana Purchase. The family had enslaved a number of Haitians that had just made it to freedom after the Haitian Revolution. It is believed that a voodoo princess was among those enslaved, and she cursed the land. Story 2. Noctum Hedernum. In the small town of Oak Ridge, Oregon, there is usually very little going on. Being a small community, however, when something does happen, everyone knows and is there to help. Recently, it was evident that there was a break-in at one of the houses of one of the communities. Residents, as expected, everyone was there to help, but were quickly sent home by a couple of investigators from another town. It wasn't, however, a traditional break-in. The door wasn't open. It wasn't taken off its hinges or knocked in. There was a hole about 4 feet in diameter that looked as if it were scratched all the way through the door, while one investigator says to the other, something took the time to claw through the whole door. The other investigators silently examined the door. It was this time that he had noticed a thick, dark red liquid puddling underneath the door and spread around the hole. The investigators quickly ruled out the fact that it was human blood. It was too thick and dark hole. Hence in the house, the investigators saw no material damage. Nothing seemed out of place or broken. There was also no sign of empty space in the house, so they assumed there was no theft. The only other damage to the house was a hole similar to the one on the front door, on the door leading to the basement. Following the trail of blood, the investigators walked to the basement door and descended the stairs. The scent of blood became extremely powerful as they stepped on the basement floor. They were met by an extremely grim sight. The body of the homeowner lied on the floor, bloody and broken. His organs lay fanning out on the basement floor, his eyes taken out of the sockets, and his limbs were contorted in awkward angles, showing that he was brutally beaten. Before they could essay why anything, they saw a piece of paper with writing scribbled on it lying on his chest. One investigator grabbed it and read aloud, "I am going to die. I need to get my story out, not for fame or publicity, but as a warning. I won't waste any time, so here is my story." The sounds of crickets chirping awoke me from my slumber. As I sat up, I realized how badly my head hurt. I felt each individual heartbeat in my temples. Looking around, all I saw was blackness. It smelled of damp moss, and I swear I heard breaking twigs behind me. making me think there was something or someone out here. I quickly jolted around, seeing nothing but shadows of branches cast upon the ground like a theater, and the moonlight was the projector. Shrugging it off as nothing, I stood up, my arms and legs felt weak. They trembled uncontrollably. It felt cold, so cold, in fact, that regardless of how much I moved, I wouldn't warm up. I quickly decided to establish a plan to escape the woods. I decided to just select a direction and walk that way in a line, preventing myself from getting lost. After a while of walking, I realized that the smell of moss had faded but was replaced by a metallic smell like copper or iron. I also noticed that the sounds of breaking twigs were for sure footsteps, and they were louder and more frequent, leading me to believe the source was speeding you. Again, I quickly turned around. Despite being more cautious and observant, I saw nothing out of the ordinary. I assumed it was just birds or some small animal. I figured my mind was just racing, filling in the gaps with the worst possible thoughts, and I just decided to calm down. It was during this time that I realized that I wasn't even sure why I was here or how I had gotten here. I was so tied up with everything around me that I hadn't noticed the fact that I went to sleep in my bed but woke up here. Is this a dream? I thought. No, it's far real. I slapped myself, pinched myself, blinked rapidly, but with no outcome. My heart sank at this realization. Another observation I noted was that dark spots in this forest weren't just usual dark night shade. It was completely black, deep black, as if there was something completely absorbing all light around me. It's hard to explain. This dark was far more dark than anything anyone has ever seen. Despite these new realizations, I carried on deeper into the forest. The forest consisted of some dead trees with grotesque branches stretching out at me and nothing. The only things visible were these malevolent trees. But this quickly changed as I continued walking. I saw a clearing in the trees, a slightly moonlit field, the size of a large vehicle. Assuming from in there I could get better bearings, I decided to cautiously enter the clearing. As I approached the center of the field, I saw a large brown object. I wasn't sure if it was alive or not until I noticed I could see its breath. The creature looked up at me. I froze. It was a bear, but before I could start backing away, it took off in the other direction. Was it really that scared of me? I thought to myself. I really did try to tell myself it fled from me, but I knew it ran from something else. I decided just to keep moving onward through the clearing. It was about this time that I heard a familiar sound. It was running water. I followed this sound for just over a minute before I came across a small creek. I quickly noticed the metallic scent had gotten even stronger, overbearing even. But it soon faded again. I walked to the creek and took seat on a large rock right next to the water. Leaning forward, I cupped water into my hands and drank it. The refreshing, chilled water swam its way down my throat, refreshing me and giving me the boost I needed to continue this questionable journey. I didn't regard it as anything then, but when I think about it now, it sends chills down my spine. I remember seeing what looked like an extremely pale humanoid, about 6 feet tall, hunched over. It appeared to be naked. It didn't appear to have eyes, just black holes. It wasn't just what a normal person would perceive as black. This is the deepest, darkest black far beyond any black imaginable. The creature disappeared as soon as it appeared, but its appearance was stitched into my mind, explaining how I can recall what it looked like despite its short visit. But I figured this was just my imagination going crazy. When I was done with my short break, I decided to continue in the same direction. I hopped across the visible rocks in the creek and continued. Looking ahead, I saw that the forest appeared to cut off. Strangely, it looked like in a video game wattower, and the world hasn't loaded, and there is just an abrupt cut-off. I figured that was the darkness playing tricks on my eyes, but as I got closer, I was convinced otherwise. Laying down next to the pit, I could lay my arm fully stretched out without feeling a bottom, so I grabbed a rock and tossed it in. I never did hear it hit the bottom. I quickly noticed that this pit was, in fact, as dark as the creature's eyes. I couldn't even see the white form of my arm as it entered the void. I was snapped out of my by the sound of footsteps again. I looked back to see a pale shape running after me. It didn't run like a person. It contorted awkwardly, swinging its limbs around violently as it stared at me. It didn't just stare at my eyes. I felt it glare straight to my soul with its black eyes as it created a terrifying screeching nose. At this point I ran. I had no destination but to get out. I just continued to run and run, hopping over down trees, avoiding voids, just running. My lungs felt like they were on fire, but I was quickly given hope as I saw a glimmer of light through the branches. It was a house. Not just any house, but my neighbor's. I ran past it and into mine around the corner. My house looked over the dark forest. I slammed the door behind me as I entered and just ran straight to my bed. It took me a while, but I finally fell asleep. The next thing I knew, I awoke in my bed. Now I am sure you are thinking it must have been a dream, and I even tried to tell myself that, but I knew deep down it wasn't. I went back in to those woods during the day, of course. It was just as I remembered it, except there were patches of grass darker than the rest. I quickly realized that these darker patches were where the voice had been the night before. The grass cut from a vibrant lime to a malevolent sage green. I decided it would be best just to go home. I have never been back in the forest, however. Every night I get the feeling that I am being watched. I feel like the pale creature is looking at me, but whenever I look outside, it is just the border of my backyard and trees, or so I thought. Last night I had the same feeling of being watched, so again I looked outside, this time with a bone-chilling realization it had been there all along. I didn't see the creature, but as I looked into the blackness of the forest, I could barely make out to patches in the shadow, much darker than the pitch black of night. I knew these were the creature's eyes. I was sure of it. I froze. I couldn't move a muscle in my body, but suddenly I gagged. The metallic scent hit me like a ton of bricks. I quickly snapped out of my paralysis and closed my curtains, crawling into my bed, crying. I didn't get any sleep that night. I talked to myself, trying to keep myself company. I soon realized that I was going insane. I had been talking to myself, even laughing with myself, thinking about those eyes and the color, or rather absence of color of them. The longer I thought about the creature, the more I noticed everything darkening. So I tried to keep my mind off of it, smacking myself every time I thought of it, talking to myself even more. arguing with myself. I looked around at the boarded-up windows, bolted doors, and my small rations of food. The silence was broken by sounds of scratching at my front door. I wasn't leaving my house, not for anything. I quickly realized that the metallic scent was that of blood, and it was getting stronger. I never could find the source, and never was prone to have nosebleeds, nor did I have them when these incidences occurred. The smell seemed to come from nowhere. As I walked around my house, I noticed the further away from my front door I got, the fainter the smell became. Amazed by this, I tried to get as far away from the door as possible, not only to escape the scent, but to put distance between me and the scratching sounds. I moved into my basement. The scent was much less potent there, and I could embrace in the lighter of the two darks. I was sure that the creature's eyes and the voice were not only absence of Lee Geechee, but something more. I write this because I know it will be my last day. My food ran out 3 days ago, and the scent of blood is burning my nose, and for the last 5 minutes I have heard scratching at the basement door. Now I will hide this letter in a box in my basement as a warning to anyone in this area. Do not go into the forest. From this point the small ink letters cut off into large, hardly legible letters that appeared to be written using the dark blood substance. It was thick, nearly incomprehensible handwriting, as if a child just learning to write had written it using finger paint. Turn around, the investigator read aloud. The two men slowly peered around from the body, only to be met by two black voices staring at them from the darkest corner of the bathroom. Story 3. Sleepy Trove. Sleepy Trove. How well you trust the exits and turnoffs that dot your local interstate highway. I tell this story to make you reconsider taking such detours while driving through heavy rain on the Ohio Turnpike. Last year, I caught sight of a plain-looking sign during an upward battle with my eyelids to stay open. The word sleep was in the title. After what seemed to be just a few moments later, another brown sign, even rustier than before, came into view. Sleepy Trove Rest Stop. 1 mile ahead, it read. As I passed this econ sign, I felt an intense numbing feeling drape over my whole body. I was tired, and I couldn't deny it to myself any longer. I swerved and succeeded in pulling off at the exit for a minute or more. As I followed the dimly lit turnoff, the rain continued to pour down, and I told myself I made the right decision. Looking back now, I tell myself that I would have turned off even if the rest stop name had an T comprised the word sleep in the title. But I'm not convinced of that, because not so subliminal advertising works well when you're tired. I had been driving home from college for a weekend break, for I knew I needed a lazy weekend getaway, and I was looking very much forward to my mom's cooking and crashing in my old bedroom. But I couldn't help that my thoughts, or my dreams about my bed, seemed to lead me to make my last-second decision to pull off the road and follow the strange brown-colored sign to the Sleepy Trove Rest Stop. Immediately I wished I hadn't. And heat of the usual Turnpike Service Plaza, there was only a block of restrooms, lit solely by my headlights as I parked in front. Mine was the only car to grace the cement structure, which was not too surprising because it was after midnight, and maybe the more seasoned travelers had known the lack of Starbucks and McDonald's at Sleepy Trove, the absence of restaurant logos upon the rest stop sign should have been a warning, but as I say, I was tired. At first I was relieved to be alone, but despite feeling somewhat safe, I locked my door before reclining my seat with my vehicle engine all fan. The rain easing, I could now listen to a paranormal radio talkback show that seemed to be the only strong signal all night. Besides my circadian rhythm telling me to pass out, that is, the guest on the radio program was talking about missing people all over the U.S. and how there were clusters of disappearances near national parks. I turned it off, not because I was getting scared or anything, but because the guest's final conclusion was that the perpetrator was in fact Bigfoot, which he annoyingly called Sasquatch to lend undue scientific-sounding weight to his premise as the rain dwindled the wall. Why, the unmistakable heaviness in my bladder became harder and harder to ignore. That beer I shared at my buddy Dave's before I left was no doubt the culprit. The thing was, I didn't even like using those pretty bathrooms at Macy's, let alone this rundown, no doubt spider-infested trucker's dump. But since the rain had stopped and nobody else was around at that moment, I convinced myself that it was the best time to go. Unlocking my door, I dashed over to the men's entrance. Luckily, a single bulb hanging down from the cobweb ceiling lit the cubed window. Less room, there was an empty energy drink bottle and a single sink, a discarded hooded raincoat in the corner, and what I hoped was just rainwater soaking the yellow-tiled floor. As I made use of the stainless steel urinal, the heavy downpour of rain began again like applauding angels. The roof was bombarded with water, and the sound reverberated throughout the bathroom. Even through the rain, I still couldn't mistake the sound of my car's engine starting up. I zipped up and bolted to the entrance, almost slipping over. Okay, I did slip over, but I stumbled up just in time to see my taillights speed away back towards the interstate before vanishing in the watery curtain of the blasted storm. I stepped back into the restroom, checking my pockets and realizing that I had indeed left my keys in the ignition. Someone must have been waiting in anticipation for me to finally get out of my car. Someone who had obviously got his courage from the energy drink in the sink. I cursed the Bigfoot man on the radio in anger for causing me to leave the keys in the ignition to listen to his dribble. But soon relief washed over as I pulled out my cell phone. I would call the police, and they could head the thief off with a roadblock and bring my car right back. But I was back cursing Dr. Sasquatch as soon as I saw there was no reception in the urine-soaked hellhole it was. Then, as I was moving about the restroom trying to find a signal that I first saw it, well, I had of course noticed it earlier. The industrial blue hooded rain jacket plopped in the corner had been there all along, but now out of the corner of my eye it shuffled ever so slightly. I stepped away, afraid there was a rat or something inside. Staring at the half-sitting-up jacket, I realized something about it unnerved me. It was sprinkled with water, but was against the far wall where rain couldn't have possibly reached it. There was also something else that caused me to shiver. A rusty old LD chain was attached to the tiled wall, and metal links trailed up the jacket's sleeve. At that point, I noticed I had moved all the way to the door. Eerily, I stared at the strange-looking sket as the bashing deluge upon the roof almost deafened my ears, and with that my mind began panicking again. My heart felt like it was about to leap out of my chest. Having my back already drenched from the downpour, I made the decision to get away and try to find a signal on my phone and to also think clearly away from the noisy ceiling. I first considered heading for the road and trying to flag down a car or truck, but knew they wouldn't see me on the rain-swept road. Instead, I circled around the back of the restroom block, using my phone as a light source and constantly checking the bars for our reception. I futilely texted a quick message to my friend Dave, stuck at Sleepy Trove Rest Stop on Turnpike. Come help. I was so fixated at seeing a signal icon that my feet a low step into a lake that was down a slight hill from the restroom. Looking across the rather large lake, I could see what looked like little houses lit up against the night's darkness. After my eyes adjusted, I made out the houses were on an island and that they were not houses at all. The lights were coming from one facility. It was a collection of huts and cabins circled by a veranda, very ch like a campground, as there was still no activity on my phone. I followed the lake for a few minutes until coming to an ancient, half-sunken, missing planked wharf. There was one corrugated iron CGN that, when illuminated by my phone, read, Sleepy Trove Boy Scout Camp. I immediately glanced back over to the set of cabins across the lake, but could see no sign of them anymore. I assumed trees or some other mass were blocking the lights. From that position, walking back the way I had come to recapture the previous view of the faraway campground, I quickly realized that all the lights must have been turned off. Had they seen me, or was it only a coincidence? Maybe the lights had been on a timer or the storm had knocked the power out. As the rain soaked me to the bone, I worried about damaging my phone and I hurried back to the restroom block. This time I went into the ladies' side and to my disappointed, it was no nicer than the men's. I then made a silent prayer to use and enjoy the Macy's bathroom if I ever got out of this place. As I clenched paper towels over my phone to dry it, I thought I saw one reception bar fleet across the top of the screen. I clicked on the connectivity option and was surprised to find a Wi-Fi connection. Tapping it so quickly that I almost splintered my screen, I joined the free Wi-Fi of Sleepy Trove Boy Scout Camp. The name unnerved me as by the looks of that wharf. Surely no Boy Scouts had been over to that little island since the dawn of the internet. The signal strength was weak, but my phone's search engine popped right up. I had never been more curious, and since none of my friends, family, or Dave would be on Facebook this early, I typed in Sleepy Trove Boy Scout Camp, and words like abandoned, haunted, trespass, disappearances, cults, cryptids, and urban exploration littered web page descriptions. Because clicking on links failed to load, I gathered most information from the search results. Sleepy Trove Camp had a pair like closed in 1980 after several boys had been violently disassembled by an unidentified hostile force. Their ghosts and the unidentified hostile force are said to badly haunt the AR. Right as I read that bit of chilling information to the chain that was attached to the jacket made me shudder. Someone or something was yanking on that chain like a game of tug-of-war. A blood-freezing scream then echoed from the neighboring restroom before the banging ended abruptly. I heard someone running outside, and when the heavy footsteps sounded like they were far enough away, I head out of the safe ladies' room and headed back to the men's. guided only by the light of my trusty phone. I remember passing by a newly arrived car before heading into the bathroom as my perceptions became a deafening, warpy blur. My friend Dave, it turned out he had received my text after all. His face was contorted in an agonizing explosion of frozen terror, blood now cover. The urine-soaked tiles and the jacket from the corner was now lying discarded by the door, covered in blood and large chunks of brown, dirty hair. The chain had been ripped out of the wall as well. Whoever or whatever had been trapped there had been awoken and was now free. The next thing I clearly remember is hearing my screams mixed with the sound of Dave's car horn as my fist beat the steering wheel. I've done little research since that horrifying night. My car was found just one stop down the turnpike. Traces of similar filthy brown hair were discovered on the driver's seat. The police said they were adult, whereas the hair from the restroom was from a child, both most likely that of a primate. I let my parents handle liaison with the police after that. I don't know what lights I saw over at Sleepy Trove Boy Scout camp that night, but I often imagine they lived there and traveled to the structures and facilities that dot the mainland to find their victims trespassing on. The Boy Scout Camp Island can bring with it a $1,000 fine. But I wouldn't even go back if they paid me that much. It's not like I could return anyway. The Sleepy Trove exit is gone and the restroom block has been torn down. Try searching for it online or, heavens forbid, on the turnpike itself, and you won't find any trace of it. But I fear as we move further and further away from them, they will continue to encroach more and more upon us. Story 4. Old Vinyl. My grandfather loved music. No matter what time of day or what he was doing, something was always playing on the old phonograph in his cozy living room. I used to come over and help him with little things around the house like fixing the pipes under the sink or installing a ceiling fan, and I hear Chuck Berry or Miles Davis booming through the house, lighting up the place. He knew every word and sang along until eventually I knew all the words and joined him. My entire childhood is compiled of memories just like that, full of music and changing records over. As he got older, it became harder for him to walk, and in turn it became harder for him to change the albums toward he and I'd find him sitting on the couch asleep with a phonograph, and I would turn it off for him. It was the least I could do for him. He'd done everything for me growing up. The last time I saw him, I was turning off the record player and taking out the vinyl so I could put it back in its sleeve when he jumped up and yelled, "Don't stop the music!" He screamed as he grabbed my wrist and gave me a scolding look. It was very out of character for such a gentleman who never yelled in even the most stressful situations. I pulled up his blanket to tuck him in on the couch and put the record in its sleeve. That night I received a phone call from his neighbor, Ms. Lenning. Apparently, she had gotten really nervous and felt like she should check on my grandfather, which ultimately ended in her finding him in a pool of blood in the kitchen. He had slices all across his body and was found with a knife tightly gripped in his hand, and his eyes were wide open. I stayed on the line silently while my heart broke. This was very shocking news for me, but he had been fighting a battle with dementia for quite some time at that point, and I figured something would happen to him sooner or later. whether it be him falling in the shower or forgetting to eat. He was much too proud to go to a nursing home, and he had been in a good mental state until very recently. The funeral service was beautiful and fitting for him. It was an open casket. I couldn't even tell that the horrific incident had happened. Instead of crying, my family got together and laughed in memory of him, watching old home videos and scoping through pictures. Even in his younger days, he was the same music-loving goof that I had always known. My mother recalled some memories where they walked through the park on hot summer days, or times where he had gotten lost using a GPS. It hurt so bad to know he was gone, and so soon after I had seen him last. I hadn't even said goodbye. We met up again weeks later to discuss the will. My grandfather wasn't a very rich man, so we didn't think there'd be much to divvy up. Brenda, my loving daughter, I leave my home. My mother teared up and smiled, surely thinking of something he had said to her long ago. To Lisa, my sister, you have my car. Take care of it. It's vintage, you know. He laughed and then suddenly burst into tears. I assumed it had been an inside joke between the two of them. Then we reached the very last line. And to Dylan, my gracious, brave grandson, my record collection and my phonograph, so you can always remember the time we shared. After reading that, I teared up and my heart broke all over again. Even in death, he was the best grandfather I could ever ask for. Later that evening, after everyone had retrieved what they were given, we all left to return to our respective homes. I set up the phonograph on my kitchen table. I had no place to put it yet, and placed a shining black record on the table and placed the needle down. Miles Davis was playing all of my memories out loud through my entire apartment. Days and days of ice cream and hot homemade dinners and nights of hide and seek under blankets. Then the record skipped. It repeated over and over. I adjusted the needle and placed it back down. It resumed. A couple of songs later, I turned it off and went to bed. The next day I went to work, walked my dog, and visited my mom to check on her. After my busy day, I came home to use my old record play again. This time I put in one of the swing albums he had. It had no official sleeve, just paper to cover both sides. I placed the needle down, and instantly it began to screech. It was so loud that I became dizzy. It stung my eardrums, and my eyes started to water. I figured something was wrong with the vinyl, so I gave it a rest for the night. At about 4 a.m., I heard a faint noise coming from the kitchen. I figured I had left the TV on before bed and just forgot to turn it off. I shrugged and wiped away the tiredness from my eyes, heading toward the noise. As soon as I got into the kitchen, I realized the TV was off, but the record player was on. It was skipping, and a record that I had never seen was playing. It was repeating the same word over and over. R, 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 R. Slightly uncomfortable, I took the needle off the record and went back to bed. After a quick Google search on vinyl care, I came to the realization that it couldn't be the record. It was virtually untouched, and in great condition. Maybe it was the phonograph, I thought to myself. The next day, I went to Jamie's Music, which is a music store near my apartment. that does repairs on vintage instruments and music players. I told a balding man behind the counter the problems I had been having with the phonograph, and he looked at it intently. "It looks vintage," he said, typing the serial and number into his computer. "Ah, here it is, the tumbled hand. Jury model number 4. There were only 3 in circulation. It's worth a fortune. Can you fix what's wrong with it?" I asked him, hoping more than anything. The parts are custom and virtually impossible to find. How about I take it off your hands? He licked his chapped lips, and I declined. I promptly laughed. I figure if it were really broken, I could just leave it alone and keep it as a token of remembrance of my younger days, and maybe one day I'd give it to my grandson. Later that night, I woke up in a cold sweat. I figure it had been a nightmare, but I couldn't remember what I had seen. Then I heard it again. The loud screeching noise shook my bedroom door and didn't seem to be anywhere near stopping. My door was clicking back and forth on its hinges. I ran out into the kitchen and stared at the table. I didn't remember plugging in the record player, but after almost having my inheritance ripped off, I was a little distracted. I raised the needle and turned off the machine. As I was walking away, I heard a quiet sound coming from the record player. Dead, dead, dead. My heart jumped out of my chest as soon as I made out the words being repeated. The record player wasn't even on, and yet it was threatening me. I moved the record player into the spare room and closed the door tight. I went into the living room and fell asleep to a talk show with 2 men talking about the importance of the bald eagle. Suddenly, the screen contorted into static, and I could hear a quiet voice. I moved closer to the screen. It sounded like an old man crying, "Don't stop the record." I heard it so very faintly, so I moved even closer. The crying turned to wailing. "Don't stop the record." I jumped off of my couch and hit the floor screaming. I realized it was morning now. I must have fallen asleep. I spent the morning thinking about what had happened. Was it all a nightmare? Howled that up, except for the fact that I woke up on the couch. I didn't have time to worry for too long, so I didn't. My nightmare had told me not to stop the record, so I just put on the nearest vinyl and put it on repeat, just for safe measure. At work, my co-workers noted on how tired I looked, and I did feel noticeably more exhausted than I usually would. I walked into the bathroom to check my face and see if I really looked as terrible as they said. I looked at my face and realized that I looked much thinner. My cheekbones were more pronounced, and my eyes were complemented dark swirls of purple lining my eyelids. I looked so tired after the bathroom. I feigned being nauseous to my boss so I could go home and sleep. Maybe I just needed a couple of hours to rest. As I headed up to my apartment, I heard the screech again. This time it was so ridiculously loud I was forced to my knees, screaming on the top of lungs. I couldn't even hear my own yelling, yet I saw everyone else in my complex walking around casually. Couldn't they hear it? I pushed through and made it to my door. The sound was so intense I started shaking in pain. I hurled my door open. The record player was sitting on the table again, and not in the guest room where I had left it. I had to stop it. I had to. I ripped out the record and smashed it. In my relief, I went to my bedroom. As I was walking, I saw the shadow of the phonograph, but it was different than I had seen before. Out of the tube there was a twisted hand. I turned around, and look, there was a clawed and nasty arm poking out from the tube. You shouldn't have stopped. The record, the voice sounded strained and very clear. I ran to my spare room and took out my wooden baseball bat that I had bought a few summers ago and ran back. The arm was fully out and the crown of a head was poking out. A horn was visible from where I was standing. I smashed down as hard 500 as I could on the player. Laughing followed each swing. Not a single visible mark was made. I looked at the record on the player and realized it had no label. I thought back to the other screeching occurrences. Both had been with the same record. Could there be a connection? I looked under the table and saw bitch brewed and tossed it in the player. I slammed down the need, and turned the volume up all the way. Heavy sax and powerful drums overpowered the room and calmed me suddenly. Everything felt like it was in the right place all of a sudden, and I wasn't afraid. The music cut suddenly. I love you, Dylan. I heard through the record player. I love you too, Grandpa, I said back through tears. I heard my grandfather using all his strength to pull whatever was crawling out of that record player back in. The music started back right where it had left off. The demon disappeared, shriveling and becoming a cloud of black dust sucked into the tube like a pile of dirt in a small tornado. Days later, I told my family and my friends about the incident. And of course they shrug it off as a delusion from lack of sleep. So I just stopped talking about it. Eventually I started feeling better and my face went back to how it had been. Everything just slipped back into place perfectly. I moved on, found a girl, got married, and had some kids. Now my children are fully grown adults and have children of their own. I've had this phonograph for 40 years now, and I've never stopped the music since. But I am starting to get older, and it's getting harder to change the record story. 5 windows. Heterochromia iridium is just a fancy scientific way of saying I have to different colored eyes. It's the first thing people notice when they meet me. Wow, that's cool, is the most common response. I'll usually just close one eye and say, yes, it is. What people fail to realize is my heterochromia iridium comes with a steep price. I don't know how it happened. Maybe I was born with it. Maybe the color thing brought it on. But I'm psychologically insane, 20 years old, and I am certifiable. Now before you call BS or try to leave, let me say that it's a very particular type of insanity. Dissociative identity disorder, which is just a fancy scientific way of saying split personalities. Yes, I know what you're thinking. DIs, well, let me just say, all the professionals have a similar theory. I have been the subject of many psychological papers, studies, and cross-examinations, and all the big wigs say my condition is in fact due to my heterochromia iridium. I'm not convinced. After all, this is my mind they're all fussing with. I granted an opinion. Some of the more intense psychologists theorize that I'm a literal balance between good and pure, absolute evil. Naturally, my dark brown, almost red eye is reflective of my evil self, while my baby blue eye contains my inner mother, Teresa. I understand psychology is a relatively new study, but come on. It all sounds ridiculous. like something from a James Bond movie but maybe they might actually be onto something, as much as I like to pretend I'm normal, like, okay, when I see my pretty neighbor from across the street, most of the time, I want to ask her how her day was and maybe get the courage to ask her out. But every once in a while, I get the urge to cut off her Achilles heels and strap her to a treadmill, which is why I think I'm going through with the treatment. The latest batch of scientists have a grand scheme of inducing a coma and letting my two conscious selves battle it out for control of my body. Sounds crazy, huh? Good blue eye vs. the insidious brownish red eye. Good vs. evil. Winner take all. It has taken some convincing, but I'm finally going through with the coma. I do not believe I have split personality. Boo. I know something is wrong. All of the research cases I have studied thus far, the subject actually has two different identities. I do not. I'm Jordan Cormack, and I've never once thought I was someone else. My dear mother, however, she believes I have another identity. It's just sedated or dormant in my subconscious. She's encouraging me to go through with the treatment. When she first presented it to me, I had the urge to dissect her ears and feed them to her, served with a side of tartar sauce. After that thought, I realized I needed help, and I should probably seek it. So, today's the day I glove up against my inner evil. I half expect nothing to happen. I wouldn't be surprised if I wake from my artificial coma and feel absolutely nothing. I figure it's worth a shot at least. As I enter the clinic, I am greeted warmly by 3 doctor-scientist types and my mom. I respond in kind and try to stay open-minded. One of the lab coats says to me, "We want to remove all of your fears. Jordan, we will monitor your body's vitals and wake you up if it becomes dangerous." My mom just smiles and nods. Sure thing. They guide me to a lone bed, surrounded by a gaggle of monitors and machines. They're not sure how long I will be out. Some of the machines are meant to feed me, others are meant to monitor me. Other machines, I don't have a damn clue as to their purpose, but I take solace that we at least have them. I lay down on the bed, and 3 white coats, plus my mom, gaze down expectantly. My mom takes my hand, a single tear rolls down, and she "Youth, I love you, Jordan." I blow a kiss and lie back comfortably on the pillows. They put a mask over my face. "Jordan, give it everything you've got. We've been training your mind for months now. We have every bit of confidence you'll wake up whole. Once this is over," I nod, and my world is black. Story 6. The Unfortunate Life of Jamie Robert Mitchum. My mother always told me to stay away from Jamie Robert Mitchum. Maybe I should have listened to her. I guess I didn't really understand why at the time. I guess children are more trusting. Sure, he was strange. Anybody could see Jamie was the type of kid to play with a magnifying glass on the blacktop during recess. He wore the early loss of his mother on his sleeve and the bruises from bouts with bullies on his arms. Jamie fought with everybody. He fought with the teachers. He fought with whatever parental figure stumbled through the door of his house that week. I think he would fight a dog if it looked at him the wrong way, but good friends were hard to come by at the time. We were 2 dorks destined to stick by each other's side. My strongest memory of him begins in the 5th grade, on the day they found Maggie Hennaway's body buried behind the schoolyard, or, more accurately, the day Jamie found her body behind the schoolyard. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. We were playing cowboys and Indians at recess. Essay, me as any day. Jamie always insisted on being the cowboy. His interpretation of the rules included chasing me around the schoolyard with a weaponized tree branch at the ready. Offensive stuff. I get it. Even for back then, at one point, Jamie cornered me towards the back of the property. We were up against some fencing that separated us from the woods, and I thought I was done or I thought I was finished. It would not be the first time Jamie took the game a little too seriously by beating the hell out of me. The kid thrived on violence. He lifted the branch over his head. He laughed at me cowering with a maniacal fake laugh that seemed almost too real to be false. But just before he took his swing, Jamie stopped and pointed towards a pricker bush behind me. Look, let's go touch it. I'll never forget the callousness in his voice. The kid didn't seem concerned. He didn't seem scared. He didn't try to get the teachers. He just pointed, lazily, almost uninterested, at the stack of human remains just 3 feet behind my right shoulder. I looked at it. I wish I hadn't. The woman was sliced down the center of her torso, from the top of her chest to the bottom of her stomach. It almost looked like something you might see in an autopsy room. Small little stab injuries spread out through her abdomen and midsection. Her face appeared swollen and disfigured. I turned away and vomited. "Don't be a baby," he said. "It's just a body. Let's go touch it." Before I could take in any more, I screamed, and somebody ran and got Miss Abernathy. The rest of that day remains a blur. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. The police investigation took months. I remember that part as vividly as yesterday. They talked to Jamie. They talked to his dad. They even talked to his dad's girlfriends, and almost anybody he made contact with on a day-to-day basis. My parents were even interrogated. We did not know why at the time, but we found out when the police announced a break in the case. Maggie spent her last night alive in the Mitchum house. It is hard to say exactly what happened. Some believe that Mr. Mitchum, Jamie's dad, and Maggie were sleeping together. The officers and district attorney settled on the theory and prosecuted it successfully. Nobody seemed very interested in the fact that Jamie found the body. Nobody seemed very interested in his deviant behavior at all, and so I didn't push them. Jamie's dad went to jail in the summer of '95. He moved in with his aunt soon after, and things only got stranger from there. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. Jamie liked the woods. My family house bordered the same massive forest connected to the schoolyard. For a long time, that fact seemed like the only reason we were free. Hideous at all. Every day after school he would call the house and ask to come over. My parents worked until 5, and I was not doing anything else, so I didn't mind the tradition eventual. Why it became so ingrained that he didn't bother to ask after a while. By the time the winter of 7th grade rolled around, Jamie dropped by each and every day, and he always wanted to go in the woods. I did not think much of that fact at first. I probably should have connected the dots between the location of his father's drop site and the proximity to my house, but I didn't. The woods are endlessly interesting to a pair of 13-year-old kids The creek contained fossil beds from when Jersey was underwater. The hills and valleys provided the perfect grounds for snowball fights, explo, ring, and all the other kinds of things we did. Back then, it seemed normal for another kid to want to hang out there. One day after school, Jamie brought a strange new device with him. It looked and sounded like a metal detector, but Jamie, of course, insisted otherwise. He said it was his dad's. He said the device could detect thin lines in between worlds, and that there should be one in my woods. I said that shit sounded stupid. For a couple of grown teenagers, we were 13 then, well past the days of stick fights on the playground. But that comment didn't stop him from beeping all over the woods for hours on end. The nose started to get really annoying. He started to get annoying. Eventually, the whole thing felt childish, and I told Jamie the same. He did not take that well. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. We didn't find it yet, he whined. Please, Matt, we need to find it. We're never going to find something that does not exist. Don't you think if there was a portal to another dimension in my backyard, the government or somebody would have fucking found out by now? What if my mom's there? He asked with a sniff. What if my mom is waiting to cross over to get me and she can't? I don't want to be alone anymore, man. I can't. I never even see my aunt. I want what you have. I want my family back. How do you know she's there? That doesn't make any sense. My dad told me. I stared at him. The tears on his face looked genuine. Fine. One last time, asterisk, 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 asterisk. Something about that last walk down the familiar path made me shiver. This happened a long time ago, but I still remember the sensation of my hairs standing on my neck. I could not figure out why at the time. Jamie looked cheerful and even hopeful for the first moment. In a while, maybe that was it. This was supposed to be our last trip, and yet he still seemed happy. He kept his eyes fixated to the metal detector, hummed some old song, and did not pay me much mind. We split up. I checked out the fossil beds for the 1000th time. I looked for new and interested things in the creek. A family of deer passed by, and I watched them for a while. As it got darker outside, I couldn't see Jamie anymore, but the persistent beep of his metal detector told me he was in range sometime. Around 4:30, the device started to freak out. The beeping pulsated so strong that it sounded like a fire alarm. After it stopped, the woods returned silence. Jamie, it's probably just an old sewer pipe. Man, those things have metal in them, I think. From somewhere to my left, a pair of footsteps sprinted in my direction. I didn't have time to react. I didn't have time to brace for impact. I turned just in time to catch a large boulder to the forehead. Then the lights went out. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. I woke up to find my arms restricted. My head throbbed from the impact. I wanted to touch it with my hand, but I wouldn't. I wanted to cry, but the gag on my mouth made it impossible to even talk. I wanted to stare my former friend down, but the blindfold made it impossible to see. Dude, what the fuck? I mumbled grudgingly. What the fuck? Jamie laughed. I found it. I fucking found it. I can't believe I fucking found it. I tried to argue with him. I tried to tell him to untie me, but he ignored me. My dad thought he found it. He used to come out to these woods every fucking night looking for it. That he was where, a knife entered my abdomen. I can still feel the way that sharp blade cut effortlessly into my belly. In, then out, I screamed, I have to do this. You know that, right? I don't want to. Not really. I'd rather take somebody like our English teacher. But who knows if there's time. I can feel her here, can't you? Jamie stabbed me again. I started to lose the will to fight. Dad told me all the rules just before he left. One life for one and we'll be a family again. That's all it takes, a sacrifice. That's all the devil wants. The rope around my wrists was loose. So that's why he always kept a backpack. Rope, blindfold, tape. He planned this. The rope around my wrists was loose. My blood-sapped brain repeated. Don't worry about dying. He continued, your parents are old. You'll see them again in 20 years. That'll probably be as quick as turning off a light over there. He stabbed me again, lighter this time, more like a scratch, as if he felt bad doing it. I turned my hand to the right, and to the left I shimmied as much as possible, without giving away my intention. After a moment, I reached for the shitty knot with my free fingers and pulled it loose. The rope fell free by my feet, and I did not give Jamie the chance to react. My right fist flung towards his face, with every inch of muscle and strength remaining in my body. It connected with his jaw. My left followed. A minute later, and in seconds, Jamie was on the ground. The asshole never even bothered to tie my feet, so I leapt on top of him, right on top of the outstretched knife in his hands. The blade connected with the soft tissue in my stomach. I fell backwards with the knife still in my gut before Jamie pulled it out cleanly. He got up, he laughed for a second, then he rose, the blade over his head, black eye and all, and prepared to bring it down one final time. But before that could happen, a gunshot broke through. The night Jamie collapsed. He died inches from my side. I nearly joined him, asterisk, 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 asterisk. The man who fired the fatal shot was a police officer who witnessed the fight. My mom called them when I didn't come home in time. Like I said, she never quite trusted Jaime, and that distrust may have saved my life. The cops quickly arranged for an ambulance, and after a couple blood transfusions I survived. We did not go to the funeral. I did not go to school. My parents stopped going to work. Eventually, the gossip in town became too much, and we decided to move, asterisk, 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 asterisk. I will never forget my final night in that house. Mom and Dad made my favorite meal, pepperoni pizza bread and grilled cheese. A heart attack waiting to happen. I think they felt guilty about them all. I think they felt guilty about Jamie, and so we decided to have a family night. All three of us sat by the TV and watched all of our favorite Christmas movies. I loved it. I went to bed with the warm memories almost outweighing the negative. But that night, sometime after 3, I woke up to a strange noise emanating from the woods. The hairs on my arm stood up. They STR lines do whenever I think about it. A metal detector tinged lazily from the woods. I shot out of bed and listened to it carefully. And as sure as I am sitting here, I heard it just under, at the persistent beeps, just underneath the lazy raindrops. A woman was crying. Story 7. The bell ringer. The school bell in the old high school rung like it does every night at 12, but nobody knows who rings it. Nobody knows why either. Some say that the bells are rung to call all of the spirits to the school. But that might just be part of an urban legend. I don't know why the bell rings, but I do know who or what it is that's ringing it. But to be honest, I wish I didn't know. I wish I was just like everybody else who's left to wonder every night at 12 who's ringing that damn bell. The school was shut down in 1992 after a series of mysterious deaths took place inside the school. Some people in the town believed that it was haunted by the spirits of the teens who were killed in the school back in 1972. Some say they heard whispers as they walked by, and some say they've seen people staring at them through the windows. Nobody was ever brave enough to spend over an hour in the school. The longest anybody had ever spent was 45 minutes, and that was during the daylight. But myself and my partner, Charlie, had agreed to spend an entire night in the school for our web show. Ghost Seekers. We came all the way from Australia and arrived at the school at 11:30, just before midnight. We gathered all of your equipment, flashlights, cameras, and everything else we used for our ghost seeking. We entered the building, kicking the pile of empty bottles and soda cans on the way. I was up for the challenge, but deep down inside, I was secretly afraid, and I know that Charlie was as well. I wish we knew what we were getting into. "Hello," Charlie yelled, his voice echoing through the school. We had our cameras on record and our flashlights in our right hands as we walked through the halls of the abandoned school. Everything was calm for the first 15 minutes until we heard the sound of a locker closing. The sound echoed throughout the building. Every sound pretty much had an echo to it. We decided to follow the sound down the hall where the old gym was. According to our research, 8 students were killed in the gym, and we thought that would be a good place to start. When we entered the gym, we could immediately feel that something was in there. We didn't need our amph to be sure. The air was cold, and the sound from our walkie-talkies were nothing but static. Something was interfering with the signal. We at least had some light from the moon that shined through a large window, so it wasn't completely dark. As we were walking through the gym, the bell in the bell tower went off. It must have been midnight. I saw the bell tower through the gym windows, and at the time I thought maybe I was imagining things because I saw someone up there. It was a silhouette of what appeared to be a man. I shook it off and continued what I was doing, despite the obvious fact of a presence. We weren't getting much activity in the gym, no whispers, no footsteps, nothing. It wasn't until we were heading out that something happened. A basketball suddenly came rolling towards us from the back of the room, an area where the light wasn't shining. It was an old, dusty ball, and I admit that it had me feeling really uneasy about the situation. As a veteran at ghost hunting, but I had never experienced something like that. It wasn't much, though, compared to what happened next. We were walking through the halls of the second floor when I noticed something weird about one of the rooms. I looked through the rectangular glass, and I noticed a TV was on. It was strange because there was no power in the school. As I continued looking, I was startled by a sudden darkness that covered my view. It was just completely dark, as if someone or something were blocking it off. "Hey, mate," I said to Charlie, "there's someone in there." "No way there is," Charlie said before looking through the glass himself. We were both shocked, and the reason for that was because we never actually saw a spirit before. All we ever saw were dark shadow WS in the footage we caught. But this wasn't a shadow. This was something more sinister. According to our research, this was the room where the killer shot himself. He was dressed in all black. When I looked back inside the room, the TV was off and whoever was standing in front of the door was gone. It was standing there for over a minute, and I was honestly ready to make a run for the door, but Charlie kept me from doing so. I wish he hadn't. We continued walking through the halls. By this time, we were hearing all kinds of noises echoing throughout the school. We heard footsteps, lockers opening and closing, and we heard loud crash noises that sounded as if something was being thrown. It seemed like the more we stayed in there, the weirder things would get. Harley thought that if we split up, we'd be able to get more footage faster. The more footage we get, the less time we'll spend in here, he claimed. Though I agreed with him, I didn't think it was worth it. Nonetheless, I found myself wandering the halls alone. "See anything weird yet, mate?" Charlie asked through his walkie-talkie. Thankfully, I wasn't hearing or seeing anything strange. I kept walking down the halls. My flashlight suddenly started flickering. The batteries were just put in there. There was no way it could have been dying. But it did, and I found myself alone in the dark. Or maybe I wasn't alone. My bloody flashlight die, I said into my walkie. No reply. Charlie, are you there? Static. Nothing but TIC. I could hear someone trying to say something. "He's behind you," whispers from the walkie. I turned around, but I didn't see or hear anything. I stood there in the dark, amazed I had yet to pee. Is my pants. A minute or two later, I heard a scream that echoed through the halls. It was Charlie. I didn't know what to do. I screamed his name. I called to him over the walkie-talkie, but got no answer. I froze in fear, and I didn't move until I heard a voice echoing through the halls. It sounded as if they were far away, like on the other side of the school. "Steve, where are you?" "I'm over here," I yell. "I can't see shit, mate." I start walking, and then suddenly I was grabbed and pulled into the corner. I was screaming, tried to fight him off until I realized it was Charlie. "Don't do that, mate," I yelled. "I heard you calling me. Why didn't you answer back?" He had a strange look on his face. I could see in his eyes how terrified he was. "That wasn't me, mate," he said. "I never called you. We decided that the fame, RATINGS, or any of that stuff was no longer worth it. We replaced the batteries in our flashlights and walked back to the front entrance. We reached the entrance minutes later, but for some reason the door was locked. We kicked it, punched it, rammed it with our shoulders, but it would not open. We were trapped, and we realized there was probably no way out. Somebody or something didn't want us to leave, so we decided to stay put. We had our backs against the door, and we didn't move. I was greatly regretting ever stepping foot in that damn school, and I'm sure Charlie was as well. I woke up about 30 minutes later. I must have dozed off. I looked around. Charlie wasn't anywhere in sight. "Charlie," I whispered into my walkie. "Where the bloody hell are you?" No answer, just static. I stood up on my feet, and I noticed someone at the end of the hall. They were just standing there, about 50 feet away. "Charlie, is that you?" "Mate," I started to walk slowly toward whomever it was. I heard my pulse beating, echoing through the halls. My breath swiftly moving in and out of my mouth, my footsteps, faintly too, touching the floor. As I got closer, I realized it was not Charlie at all. I stood still, but I could still hear my pulse beating, my breath still moving swiftly in and out. He was just staring at me. He was probably staring at me the whole time I was asleep, the whole time I was slowly walking toward him. He was in some black janitor's suit, and his face was pale with multiple stitches all over. His eyes were dark. I saw the evil within. His head was tilted sideways as he continued to stare. I didn't understand what it was I was looking at. I've never seen a spirit real before, but he wasn't just a spirit. He was a demon. "Run!" Something from my walkie yelled, and it most certainly wasn't Charlie. I ran. I didn't know where I was running to. I just ran, and I didn't look back. I ran into a classroom on the other side of the school, and I locked the door, knowing that if whatever it was a spirit, a locked door wouldn't stop it. But it made sense at the time. I stayed in there for about 10 minutes. It was dark, and I didn't know whether or not someone else was in the room with me. "Steve, Steve, it's me." It was coming from my walkie. "Where the bloody hell are you, Charlie?" "I don't know. I woke up in some room." "What room? Where are you, mate?" I could hear him weeping through the walkie. "Steve, I'm scared," he cried. I started tearing up myself. I never heard him cry like that before. I'd known him since we were 14, and I'd never heard that. "It'll be okay, Charlie. We'll be okay," I cried, hoping I was right. He was weeping uncontrollably. I knew that something was wrong. "You don't understand, mate," he cried. "Look to the right corner of the room." I lifted my flashlight. I didn't understand what the hell was going on. I pointed to the corner, and I literally froze. In fear, I dropped the walkie to the floor. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't. He was dead. Charlie was dead. "I'm sorry, mate. That was the last time I ever spoke to him. I didn't understand how he died. There was no blood, no cuts or anything. I guess he saw something that literally took his breath away. I didn't even think about how I was talking to him over my walkie, even though he was clearly dead. The only thing I thought about was that my best friend of 20 years was gone, and I didn't know what to do next. I thought about it, and I realized it must have happened when we split up. His scream. I kept thinking about his scream. I lay there with his body, and I woke up hours later to the sun shining upon my face. I'd never been so happy to see the sun. I figure it was over. I pulled out my phone, and I was finally able to call the police. They arrived, and I was finally free of that school and whatever haunts it. I drove away, never looking back. That school needs to be burned down, and hopefully it can kill the demon that lives within it. I can't go anywhere anymore without feeling ill, like I'm being watched. I was traumatized, and I still am. I saw what can never be unseen, and no matter how many hours of therapy I go through, I'll never be the same person I was before I wonder if anyone ever seen Charlie through the windows, or even heard his whispers as they walked by. If they had, I hope they weren't scared, because Charlie was a great guy. If you ever see him, tell him Steve said hi and that he misses him dearly. I don't think I will ever forget what happened in that school. I would never forget the sound of that bell, and I would never forget the demonic face of the thing that rings it. I could see him now, standing up on that bell tower, waiting for midnight and waiting for his next victim.